Alright, we're going to start our whole range of topics with the topic education. One of the most essential topics, for not just for exam preparation, IELTS, CAE, TOEFL, whatever, but for life, for speaking. Now this isn't, it's essential and not very hard or complicated. So let's get started. I need your help and I need your feedback. Yeah? So we start with the word education itself, and I'll start just going through this. What we're going to do, and I want to share that with you. Any of the major topics like education, we start with the topic itself, we brainstorm, we get the words first. When we're done with the words, then we start talking about it. When we start talking about it, there are some very, very useful questions that are very popular. Like when you sit a test, like CAE or IELTS, they might ask you a familiar question about education. Tell me about a teacher you admired very much at school. A teacher who inspired you very much. For example, which subject at school did you like most and why? It sounds very simple, right? But then if you can use specific words to explain, then you get the high score. If you just sit there and say, oh, I liked physics because it was cool, or it was good, what do you expect? A really high score? Of course not. Of course not. But if you can speak more specifically, using those specific words and expressions and phrases, that is the score winner. So that's pretty much what we want to do. So every topic that we will look at, apart from all other stuff that we do, like grammar, writing, reading, and everything else. So we brainstorm, we get the words. Once we're done with the words, we talk about it. We go through the questions, the popular questions. Then there's a reading that's connected to it, so we actually want to improve the reading as well. Then we'll look at the tricks of the test, how to do questions and readings. Then there's a piece of writing. You need to write about it. For different tests, there are different types of writing. For example, for CE, we have a whole range of types of writing. For IELTS, we have essay writing. Plus, there's this task 1 that you have to do graphs and stuff. So we will talk about that. But right now, the topic education. Speaking of education, let me just look at the word itself, give it a word family. So what is the verb?
Educate.
Yeah, and to educate. To educate. If it's cold or hot here, please let me know. To educate? Okay, let's go real fast. Educate, to educate, right? A person who gets education will be?
Teacher.
Educated.
Educated.
What do we do? What do we call a person who does the education, like me?
Educate.
Educator. Good. Educator. Yes, Claudia, I want to hear you. Educator. So, education is, what part of speech is it? So you know part of speech? What is part of speech? Part of speech. What's part of speech?
Verb, noun, adjective.
Verb, noun, adjective, adverb. These four are major. So if something is a verb, noun, adjective, adverb, and then we have prepositions, we have pronouns, so on and so forth. But especially these four are the top components of speech, like, or parts of speech, right? So why is this important? If you're ever taking a test, and actually in spoken English it's important, but if you're ever taking a test, he was asked to, there's a gap. You need a verb here, right? If I wanted to take part in, you should know what part of speech that word is, and then you'll see in the task how important it is. So every time you see a word, you should know the part of speech. We know it actually, it's not really that hard. It's just that in practice we should have a look at this. So for education, so to educate, educated, educator. Great. And can you give me this is a noun, right? So noun, verb, educated is? Adjective? Educators,
No.
another noun. And can you give me an adjective with this one? Educational. Such as educational system. The educational system of Japan. The educational system of Switzerland. The educational system of Canada. Ontario has an educational system, right? So far so good, right? No problem. Education, the educator, educated. What is the opposite of educated? I like to work with educated people, but some people say, oh no, you know those people who work in the construction industry are usually not educated, right? So what do we call them? Uneducated, huh? If you're not educated, you're uneducated, right? So uneducated people. Now, I'll take a look at some synonyms for education. But if somebody's, now we have educated and uneducated, it's different from, so we have, look, educated, uneducated. Of course, when people go to school, when there's education, there's a purpose. What's the purpose? We have learning things and all that, but at the beginning, people learn to read and write. To read and write, right? The ability to read, the ability to read and write. What is that called? In some countries, people cannot read or write. A lot of people can't read or write. In Afghanistan, for example, this rate is very high, the number of people who cannot read or write. What do we call a person who can't read or write?
Analphabetic.
Yeah, but in English, that's right, but we have another word for it. Help me. Have you heard of this word,
Illiterate.
thank you, stop cheating. Yeah, we have literacy and illiteracy, right? So then we have literate, and then we have illiterate. Correct? Literate, right? You go say literate?
Oh,
Literate.
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 Yes, kind of close. Literate.
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 Yeah. Give me a good R.
Literate.
I've always had that problem with you. Literate.
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 And he went to New York, and he discovered that in New York he can survive without speaking English because he can speak Spanish in New York, and people respond, right?
Literate.
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 Literate. Very good. Literate? No. Literate.
Literate.
I know it's A-T-E, but we say literate and
Illiterate.
very good. Very good. I don't know why people from Switzerland usually speak English very well. I have no idea why. Why?
I don't know.
What's the reason? So,
Literate.
literate,
Illiterate.
illiterate,
Illiterate.
illiterate. So literate, illiterate. So what's the noun? So these are both adjectives, right? Adjective. So illiterate people cannot read or write. So one of the first purposes of going to school is literacy, right? Is learning to read and write. The ability to read and write. Correct? This is called literacy. And people who cannot do that, they're illiterate. Now, we have the literacy rate or illiteracy rate. In some countries, the illiteracy rate is very high, such as Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, if I'm not mistaken, some 90% of people are illiterate. Or a very high percentage of people are illiterate. Now in countries such as Canada and Switzerland and Japan, The illiteracy rate is very low. The illiteracy and literacy rate is very high.
And that means that you can read and write
Yes.
when you're literate.
Yes, so if you're literate, you can read and write. If you're illiterate, you cannot read and write. Now, we had the word alphabet, and we had Javi talking about it. You know alphabet? Another word is analphabet. Javi, is that how you say in Spanish?
Analfabeto.
If someone is analphabeto in Spanish, also in English, if you say analphabet, it means illiterate, a person who doesn't know the alphabet. But if you're uneducated, that doesn't mean that you're illiterate. Not necessarily. Remember, not necessarily?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. So, guys, I want you to know this, not necessarily, and use it.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. You go.
Not necessary.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Perfect.
Not necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, we have necessary and necessarily. So, necessary would be here. That's necessary, but then necessarily. So I would say, for example, uneducated people are not necessarily illiterate. What does that mean? Uneducated people are not necessarily illiterate. That means a lot of people can read and write, but they're still uneducated. If you go to school for 2 years and learn how to read and write, and you can read banners and you can read the shop, so you know like what's written there, or you can write your own name or a few sentences, are you necessarily educated? You're not educated, right? But you are literate because you can read and write. So if you have 2 or 3 or a few years of schooling, you know, school is also a verb, right? Just a few years of schooling. Can make you literate. Yes? But not educated. That's the difference. If you're educated, you go to school, you go to college, you go to university, you get a degree, or certificate, or you do a program, that for a diploma program, whatever. So this is education. Now, so education and literacy are not exactly the same. Literacy is at the start when you learn how to read and write. Now, I want to move on. First of all, take a look at some other words for education. So, of course, education is a broad word. It's an umbrella term. Then we have things such as instruction. Yes? Instruction. And who is the person who does instruction? Help me. Instructor? What happened to you? And help me with the misspelling sometimes, okay? Please. Instructor. Yeah? Now, of course, we have teacher. Teaching. Instruction. At university level, we have to lecture. Yes, to lecture. Who is a lecturer? A lecturer. College lecturer. College lecturer or instructor, right? We have college lecturer or instructor. The art of teaching, what do we call it? There's a word for it. It comes from Latin. Does it ring a bell? Anywhere in your minds? What do we call the art of teaching? Does this word ever ring a bell in pedagogy? You can all say pedagogy. There are different ways to pronounce it. Yep. Yeah. And there are two ways of writing pedagogue. One is up to here, which is mostly American. The other one is British and American. Pedagogue. So pedagogue. And on the other hand, of course, we have students, we have learners, and we have the word pupils. So pedagogues and pupils. Now, what is pupil? So pedagogy, or pedagogy, you can say pedagogy, and pedagogue. Pedagogue is a teacher, and it's usually for kids. Usually for kids. So if you ever hear the word pedagogy or pedagogue, it's the art of teaching. Those people who are interested in teaching, and they go learn different teaching techniques and all that. The art of teaching is called pedagogy and stuff. A pedagogue is a... Now the word, of course, we have students, learners, and the word pupil. Have you ever heard the word pupil before? And what does that mean?
If you, for example, are studying like an art,
Uh-huh,
you have like a master,
uh-huh.
and you are his pupil.
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 Look, we're getting somewhere, I'll talk about that. Like if you, for example, somebody's a carpenter, carpenter? They work with wood. They want to build something with wood. And if I want to go learn, I'm not a student. I go work in that shop to learn things, right? From the carpenter. I will be an apprentice. That's a different one. Because apprentice. And you can say apprentice, but here in North America, we say apprentice.
Apprentice.
We don't pronounce the T here, but you can say apprentice. And then we have apprenticeship, which is the period. It's also a very good word. Pupil, guys, every word I put on the board, I try to put only essential words on the board. Now, the word pupil is for kids who go to school, like grade school kids. If you go to grade school, that is like primary school, and you're a kid learning, you're a pupil. Pupil has another meaning too. In our eyes, there's this black little hole in the middle of the eye. That's a pupil. And pupil dilates or dilutes. If I go out there in the sun, when there's a lot of sunshine, my pupil dilutes, right? The black spot in the middle of the eye. So that's one meaning of pupil. But the other meaning of pupil is those kids at school. So if you ever hear the word pupil, it's usually for kids. It's not for adults. Usually we don't say an adult is a pupil. So on the one hand, we have, of course, education. We have instruction and instructors and teachers and teaching and trainers and training and coaches and coaching. Of course, trainers and training and all that. On the other hand, and of course, we have lecturers at university. And when we get to the university, we'll talk about it. We have 4 different levels of instructors at university. They start with instructors, and then we have assistant professors, then associate professors, then full professors. It's the 4 levels, right? We'll get there. But if somebody's a lecturer or is an instructor, teaches in a college or... And then, of course, we have training and trainer. Trainer, training. Training reminds you of more hands-on teaching, more practical experience, whether it's sports or handicrafts and all that, or certain things. A trainer is a person who trains you, like in a team of sports, you have a trainer who trains you. A teacher who actually walks into class is not a trainer. And of course we have trainers as shoes. But I want to be done with this because I want to look at education itself. Now, so I think we're good here, right? It's just that this word apprentice, can you say it?
Apprentice?
Yeah, apprentice, an apprenticeship. We have internship too, right? We have interns and internship. If you want to go get a job somewhere, you go through an internship. That is for a while. But those are like, an apprentice is for trades and skills. Like if you want to become a woodworker, like a carpenter or a blacksmith working with metal, I'll do all the welding, or an electrician, work like that, you will become an apprentice first. And you have an apprenticeship. And we have internship. An intern. So if you want to do an internship, you become an intern, right? So we will talk a bit more about this. We'll get back to it in just a bit. Now I want to look at education itself. Okay. First of all, there's a word. This is brainstorming of words, and then we'll go to speaking. This part is not the speaking part. We need to know the words so we can use them and speak and write. Next, I'm going to ask you to write about the educational system of your countries and describe it. So you write and then talk. But now, we need to have some words, some basic words to be able to do this. What do we call the educational system, which we have to do it? There's no option, or we have to go to school. In most countries right now, primary education is necessary. There's another word for it. Is education up to, in some countries up to grade 6, in some countries up to grade 12.
Obligatory.
Obligatory is a very beautiful word. I love it. It's just the word, it's not the exact word we use, what the mot juste from the French part of Switzerland. It's not the mot juste, which is not the exact word. So that word is help me. I need help. Compulsory. So we have compulsory education. It's different from country to country. It varies from country to country, sometimes from state to state, in the same country. So compulsory means exactly, compulsory means obligatory, mandatory.
How do you pronounce compulsory?
Compulsory, obligatory, mandatory. Remember the word obligation? Now, we don't say obligatory education. We don't say mandatory education usually. We say compulsory education. Compulsory. Compulsory. Compulsory.
Compulsory.
Perfect. You get the schwa very well. Thank you. It's compulsory. Compulsory.
Compulsory.
Compulsory.
Compulsory.
I want to get that R out of you.
Compulsory.
Compulsory. Very good. Compulsory. So education is compulsory. Well, in Canada, in North America, it's usually from the age 6 to 18. Education is compulsory for 12 years. How about Switzerland?
6 years primary school and then secondary school for 3 years.
Oh, so 9 years, you have a 9-year compulsory, so 9 years of compulsory education. How about Japan?
6, 3, 3.
So you have 12 years of compulsory education. Yes? What we call here in Canada, they call it K-12, or in the US, we call it K-12 or K-13. This means, can you guess? K-12, what does that mean? If you see K-12, what does that mean?
Kids.
From kindergarten to the 12th grade. So it means from kindergarten to the end of high school. So this is a compulsory education here. K-12 or K-13 in some parts. So K-12 is actually, so that's why it's like 12 years, because we have 12 years of schooling. Now, we also have compulsory military service. So it's a word we use for education or for military service. Is military service compulsory in Switzerland?
Yes.
Oh my god! For both boys and girls?
No, only for boys.
Only for boys.
Yes.
But can girls also serve?
Yes.
You can choose to go to the army?
Yes.
Oh great!
No.
Yeah, it's good. Well, I had Stefan in the class, and he was so interesting. Well, he had a huge gun at home, and he's like, okay. And he said something funny. He said, like, every year, the boys have to serve.
Yes.
Every year.
When they are 40, they are finished.
Now they're finished.
Yes, with 40.
You guys, you see? In Switzerland? Why do you need an army in Switzerland? You already have a Swiss army, the brand, the knife
But
thing, you know?
German is close.
Yeah, German schools, okay, they're friends. And it's very interesting for me, the German-speaking part of Switzerland, they love German. Okay.
I live 5 minutes from Germany.
Yeah, you live 5 minutes from Germany, and you love Germany.
Their Germany is different than
Germany is
German.
so cheap for us.
You see? Yeah, yeah.
There for shopping.
Yeah, they go shopping and they come back. We're going to talk about all of this. And so, we have compulsory military service. Is military service compulsory in Japan?
No.
What is it? If it's not compulsory, it is. If something is not compulsory, it is.
Nobody.
No one goes, right? No, they have a professional army. You know a professional army? A professional army is where, like the United States Army. The US Army is professional. That basically means that no draft. In the US we call draft a compulsory service. When people are drafted into the military service, that basically means they come, hey, all the boys have to go serve. It's a must, like in Switzerland, there's a draft. Boys get drafted into service, right?
NBA.
Hmm?
Draft in the NBA.
Yeah. But the US Army is professional. I don't know about Spain. Do you have a professional army
Yeah, we
where
have.
soldiers are paid? So if an army is professional, it's like work. You go work and you get paid. How much? It depends. The US Army is a professional army. They pay people to go actually serve.
In Switzerland too.
Oh, you get paid?
Yes.
So it's a paid draft. It's interesting. Now they draft you, but then they pay you. It's good. It's interesting. So a professional army is optional. You know optional, which is the opposite of compulsory? Yeah? So the opposite of something that's compulsory, the opposite is optional. For example, education beyond what we have post-secondary education. Now look at those words. After secondary school in the US and in North America, education is optional. If you want to go to school, go ahead, go to college. If you don't want to go to college, you don't have to. But up to your high school diploma, secondary school, that's compulsory. After that, it's optional. You have choices, but no choice here. So I want you to learn these 3 words together, but I want you to know that we don't say mandatory education usually. We say compulsory education. But if something is mandatory, for example, a mandatory meeting, a mandatory board meeting in a company. What does that mean? They don't say a compulsory board meeting. I want you to learn words because, like at CAE, we have this use of English. Use of English. You should know that synonyms are not necessarily the same. Synonyms are not necessarily the same. They are not necessarily interchangeable. Something that's interchangeable, what does that mean? It means instead of saying compulsory, you cannot say mandatory. And an E is missing here. Interchange Changeable. If two words are interchangeable, this is something you need to keep in mind. There are a couple of things you need to keep in mind. One is the word collocations. Very important word. If two words are interchangeable, you can use one for the other. But when I say compulsory education, can I say obligatory education? No. Usually we don't say it. Why not? Because of this word, collocations. Now collocations are words, Claudia, I'm telling you, I know, I'm telling you, give me a chance. So collocations are words that come together normally and naturally. I'm sure in German, in Deutsch, kann Sie Deutsch sprechen? Yeah. Yeah, fluent, I'm fluent. I'm sure in Deutsch you have words that always come together. Like in English we say salt and pepper. For example, if we have education and I want to say this is something that you have to do, and I have three words that all the three of them mean something you must do, but I only use compulsory with education. Because compulsory education is a collocation. They collocate. They collocate together. They come together. Yeah? In a CAE test, they will ask you a large crowd or a big crowd. Large and big, both are the same. They're synonyms. But can I say big crowd or large crowd? Which one? That's the problem with CAE. Use of English. So then, that's the problem. I always tell everyone, guys, do not memorize words. Memorize phrases and sentences, not words. Example phrases and example sentences. A word is nothing without its friends. So collocation is about words that come together, the words that appear together. That's why I will try to give you sentences. From today on, I don't want anyone to memorize a word. Always memorize words together with other words. Either a phrase, or a clause, or a sentence. Not a word. Words don't work alone. They don't come alone. They don't die alone. Yeah? They're not like me. Born alone, live alone, and die alone. No. They come together. They have friends. Somebody brought me lunch today, though. So, synonyms are not necessarily the same. They're not exactly the same. So synonyms are not necessarily interchangeable. You cannot always replace compulsory with any of its sisters, obligatory or mandatory. Now, obligatory has two pronunciations. One is obligatory, one is obligatory, depending. They're not necessarily interchangeable. And that's a very, very important part of what we do here. So remember, learn sentences and phrases, not words. Please, not a word. The problem is, what we usually do, we learn a word, we check in a dictionary, German, English, Japanese English, German English. We learn the Japanese word and we memorize it that way. And then we want to use it in a sentence, and the sentence is totally awkward, totally senseless. And I'm like, oh wow, that's so German. And I'm like, wow. Because in German, you would say it that way. In Japanese, you would say it that way. In Spanish, you would say it that way. But in English, we don't say it that way. So that's why if you learn words, don't learn words, learn phrases. And learn words with. So if you ever learn the word compulsory, learn it, for example, with education. Compulsory education. If you learn mandatory, a mandatory board meeting. Have this in mind, a mandatory meeting. It is mandatory for everybody to participate. It's a mandatory meeting. What does that mean? Everybody should participate in the meeting. It's a mandatory meeting. Then you can say obligatory. You must do it. You have some obligations. You must return this much money for example. It's an obligation. It's obligatory for you to do it. Now, I want to move on. So, compulsory education, we talked about it, from whatever age. Now, I want to start with school. Okay. Now, this is the best timing angle I have. Whenever the video goes like, it gets to like 1 hour, well, then we have a break. So, what is the name of the first school kids get to go to? When we're little kids, what is the first school we go to?
Kindergarten.
Mm-hmm. But even before kindergarten, ouch.
Nursery.
Playgroup.
Playgroup. Oh yeah, like parents have playgroups and the kids get together. Great. Did you play a lot with playgroups and all?
Now. No.
Right now? No, did you as a kid?
When I was 3 years.
3 years old, yes.
Yeah.
There are play groups and all that. So there, you have play friends and you just go.
So it's
Yeah,
like
play
go
dates.
to-
You know, play dates. Kids have play dates. Like these kids, like 3 kids get together like different families. It's called play dates and play groups. That's good, but there's a formal place where you go to.
Nursery.
Okay. Nursery, good, good. Yeah, perfect, perfect. That's it. That's what I wanted to hear. So basically, we have daycare and nursery. Some people call it nursery school, but nursery. And remember, nursery is different from nursing home. What is nursing home?
Like a retirement house, like a.
Exactly.
For people.
For the elderly. The elderly. The elderly end up in a nursing home. Yep. That's it. The elderly end up in a nursing home. When you're really old, sometimes our kids are so kind, they would. Do you think it's a good thing to do, to put our parents in a nursing home?
No.
No? What's wrong? She's like, what's wrong? There's nothing wrong with that. We will talk about it. What's wrong? What's wrong with the nursing home?
Because they have worked all his life for you, and you now put them in the nursing home.
Yeah, okay. We should one day talk about it. Why? Is it okay? Will you put your parents in the nursing home?
We shouldn't, but
But,
I don't think we don't have a choice.
Yeah, you don't have choice, okay.
We have to work to
But sometimes-
earn money to raise children.
yeah, she has to work hard. But you know, at the time of your parents, like your parents' parents, there were no nursing homes, so like this, and then so people would not really commit people to nursing homes, and they would take care of everyone. So this is something we will talk about a little bit later. Hugo, what do you think? Will you put your parents in a nursing home, or will you care for them yourself?
I don't want to.
But if I have to? Oh my god. Parents, be careful. Okay, so nursery is different from nursing home, right? So nursery and daycare, and of course, yeah, well, she was talking about play dates, but that has nothing to do with education and play groups, right? So there's the nursery. So kids, when they're about 3 years old, sometimes even when they're 2-year-olds, they put them in a nursery. And then daycare is okay because you put them there and... You know, when we say nursing mothers, what does that mean, a nursing mother? A mother who breastfeeds the child. That's a nursing mother. So those who have little kids and they usually breastfeed children, those are nursing mothers. So when we have this, and then of course, after nursery, now I want to say goodbye to this part. So from nursery to kindergarten, right? How do you pronounce this in Deutsch?
The kindergarten.
Yeah,
Kindergarten.
say it louder.
That is Swiss German.
That's so Swiss German, right?
Yeah.
Ja, ja.
Ja.
Okay, ja. Say it.
Kindergarten.
Yeah, that's even, oh my God. I so miss Chris when we had a German guy here in the class, Chris, and he was so cool. So he's so bad is gone. We would have a great time if he were here too. I mean, yeah, feels so bad is gone. So kindergarten. You know, garten means garden in English, but they write it like garten, and they pronounce it.
What? This one. Kindergarten.
Garten, yeah, garten, right? The word garden, you say garten, huh?
Garten. Yeah.
Garten, so, okay. So kindergarten. So kinder means child, garten means the garden of children. So kindergarten. And after, so you know that also here in Ontario, kids get to go to kindergarten at the age of 4. So when you're 4 years old, you can go to kindergarten. Of course, daycare or nurseries before that here. But kindergarten is part of what's called formal schooling or formal education. Formal education or formal schooling. Because some people, and of course you know we have private and public. Public schools. And we have the public school system. Private schools and public schools, right? Now, it's funny because in England, if you say public school in England, it means private school. In England, some of the best private schools are called public schools. So if a kid goes to public school in England, it means it's one of those really expensive private schools. And of course, you know, we have boarding school, which is different. Boarding. I think we have lots of boarding schools in Switzerland. Do we have lots of boarding schools? Yeah, we have lots of boarding schools in Switzerland. What is a boarding school? You go to school and the kid sleeps there and the parents are happy at home because the kid is at school. Right? You send a kid to a boarding school, so they stay there for the night. So they stay in school. Like, we have lots of boarding schools in England.
Internat. I don't know the name. That is a boarding school when you're for 1 week there and go
Yes.
home at
Only on weekends. Yeah. During the weekends they go home, so they stay there the whole week. It's usually for working parents. Both parents work so hard, so they have no other option. Sometimes they have, if they're rich enough, they buy homes and property close to the school, so they get to spend a weekend even there. So boarding schools. So those are boarding schools. Now we have formal education, and what is informal schooling or informal education? Something we call informal schooling. Some people, they don't send their kids to school. So what do?
They teach.
At home. What do we call that? Homeschool.
Homeschool.
And homeschooling. For example, I was homeschooled up to grade 8. I was homeschooled up to grade 8. Some people don't believe in schools. They think that the public education system wastes the time of their children. For so many reasons, they're rich enough, they can afford private teachers and tutors. So every year the kid takes the exams, but goes up, all at home. It's called homeschooling. It's like kings and queens and princes and whatever, like the princes and princesses were usually homeschooled, right? And the kids kind of love it. But then we will also talk about it. That's one of the questions. Which one do you think is better? Homeschooling or formal education, sending a kid to school? And of course, right now, the question for colleges and universities is attending a college class or doing courses online. That's another question now. We will look at all these questions. We want to do some conversation, right? Hopefully, right after this, tomorrow. Yes. Mañana. Tomorrow. Mañana, right?
Mañana.
Mañana. So if you say homeschooling and I was homeschooled, that's a different story. But the formal education, we have either private schools or public schools. Everyone knows private schools and public schools. It's just that in England, the public school is a private school. It's that they're different. It's like the right wheel drive. They drive here from the side. Like I didn't know. Did you know that in Japan also we have right wheel drive? I thought it's only in England.
And Hong Kong too.
In Hong Kong too, yes. But in Japan, people drive on this side. It's the right wheel drive. Like England, I had no idea. I heard it from my Japanese students. It was amazing. I wanted to say crazy,
And
but
is mixed, half private, half public? Do you have any names for that?
is there like a semi-private?
Semi-private?
Yes, we have semi-private. Yes. Semi anything is like half, but semi-private? Thank you for the question. You can say semi or semi. Both are correct. Semi-private or semi-private. Semi and semi are both correct. This is like semi-private. Half. Now, so after kindergarten, basically, is junior and senior here. Junior and senior. So if you go to junior kindergarten, you're 4 years old. And if you're 5 years old, you go to senior kindergarten. But after that, you enter, there are 3 levels of education before college or university. No, actually, including college or university. So we have primary education, right? Primary education. After primary education, we have
High school.
secondary. And after secondary, we have what we call post-secondary. Or you may hear the word tertiary. Tertiary is the word after secondary. So we have primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary, secondary, tertiary. Or post-secondary. Now, speaking of primary school, so after kindergarten, kids go to primary school, right? What's another word for it? Primary school. What's the other word? The other word, because there's only one word, one more word. We say either primary school or
Compulsory.
Basic school.
Elementary.
Thank you. Elementary school. Yes? We call it either primary school or elementary school. After primary school or elementary school, you go. Then what happens?
Junior high.
That's good.
So it's like secondary school. Now, secondary school could be, we actually have high school. Sometimes there's a middle school, right? Middle school. And high school itself is divided into middle school, which is junior high or junior high school. And then we have senior high, right? So when we talk about high school, basically high school is the same as secondary school or secondary school. So secondary school in some countries, there's also middle school. Is there a middle school in Switzerland? No. There is primary school and high school.
Yes.
6 years? 6 years?
6 years primary school and 3 years secondary school. We haven't got a high school.
What? What?
Yeah.
You don't have a high school?
No.
They don't have a high school. Amazing.
Sounds good.
The Swiss do not have a secondary high school because they have Swiss Army, they have Swiss chocolate, they have Swiss cheese, but no high school. So what do? You have sixth form college? Do you have that kind of thing, like a college type of thing?
No, it is not a thing.
I love Switzerland. Guys, I should have spent my childhood in Switzerland, no high school. See how beautiful that is? So what do you do?
Go 9 years compulsory. to
What do you do
school.
after 9 years?
Apprenticeship,
For how long?
3 years.
So for 3 years then you
Yes,
choose
or you
something?
can go to a other school. This is a cantonal school for 4 years, and after this school you can go to the university. That is
That's like a,
high
is that like a
school.
college, that kind of thing? You know, you just reminded me of one word that you should know. That is, sometimes you go to a school, not for studying like books and everything, but learning skills
Skills.
and trades. We call that school vocational school.
Vocation. Vocation.
That's vocational school. This is, when you go to vocational school, you learn things such as welding. You know welding? You learn metal work. You learn carpentry. You learn to work with wood or metal or things like that. Welding is you have one of these things? Yeah?
Yeah,
You want to put two things together?
we have this
with lots
in
of
primary
fire?
School.
It's welding, huh? Did you do that?
Yes, in primary and secondary school.
Oh, that's, yeah, we call it industrial art. Now, we will take a look at the subject at school. But after, you know, like high school, some people choose, after junior high school, which is middle school, or junior high, you know, in the US, in Canada, 6 years elementary school. Then you go to 3 years of junior high, and then 3 years of senior high. Some high schools are only junior high, like only 3 years, we call it middle school. And some are 3. Some, it's crazy, some are like 2 years, 4 years. It depends. But then, instead of going to high school, that is senior high, you can choose to go to a vocational school, where you learn welding and metalwork and woodwork and all that, and you get ready to go to work, you know, in a trade, not necessarily university or college. But in Switzerland, it's very interesting. So the first 9 years compulsory education, fine. Right after that, you have some 4 years of what?
School. You can choose between 3 different school types, math and physicals.
Math and physics. Math and physics one type.
Yes, that is one type.
Okay.
The second is musics and
Art.
arts, yes, and languages is the third.
The third one
Yes.
is languages.
This is the
Yes.
reason.
And this is for 4 years. And after this you can go to a university, medical.
Have you finished your compulsory education yet? Have you done
No,
that?
I didn't do that. I go after this 9 years in a apprenticeship.
What is apprenticeship? And what apprenticeship did you choose?
I go 3 days in a week to in a what is the name? In an insurance company,
Amazing.
and 2 days in a week to school and learn what?
What are you? Is it like business or things like that?
Yes,
Or-
business, like in a bank.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like
amazing.
this.
What is it?
Accounting, yes.
Oh, you want to become an accountant
Math.
later on?
Yes, I have 3 years accounting.
Stefan also wanted to become like an accountant and then auditor.
But you can go to metal work or something like that
Oh, if you want, right?
if you want.
It's amazing, guys. See how different countries are?
Yes.
I love Switzerland. There's no high school. You can graduate in 9 years of schooling and you can graduate. And we'll talk about that a little bit, right? So, primary school, middle school, junior high, senior high. And here, when you finish high school, what happens? You graduate. Yes? To graduate. To graduate what? From. Remember, please, from. You graduate from school. Now, if you graduate from high school, you get something, a paper. What do we call that?
Diploma.
High school diploma, right? Diploma. High school diploma. Now, I want to talk about that a little bit, and of course, you get your marks and grades and all that. Let me see how much time we have for this video. So, okay, we have like a few minutes left. Now, before taking a good look at all that stuff we have in there, I want you to know that we have different kinds of schools. Some schools are religious, like we have Catholic school here. Christian schools, like with Catholic schools here. All girls schools, all boys schools. So if, first of all, we have co-educational system, educational schools, which is like mixed schools. This is for boys and girls. And instead of classmate, you know, in a school we say classmate. For girls, we say co-ed, like my co-ed. She's my co-ed. Means she's my classmate. I'm a boy and she's a girl. She's my co-ed. So co-educational school is co-education. Boys and girls go to school together. Now we have single-sex or unisex. Single-sex or unisex schools. Like Christian schools. All girls schools. All boys schools. We call it all girls. We have all girls or all boys schools. Has anyone ever been to an all girls or an all boys school here? Have you been to an all girls school?
Yes.
Or primary or second?
High school.
Your high school was all girls? How did it feel? Miserable.
No?
No?
No.
Terrible.
Sometimes.
Yeah? And sometimes it feels all good. Oh. Yeah? Did it ever feel like that? No?
No?
No? Okay. I went to a parochial school in Salt Lake City, Utah, because it was an all-boys school. They were Mormons. It's a special branch of Christianity. And it was like, oh, good. Anyways, because when it's an all-boys school or all-girls school, things happen. But, yeah, but that said, there's a lot of debate about which school is better. Is it because a lot of people debate. Some people say, oh, there's more concentration when there's all boys and all girls. There's less distraction. There's no teen pregnancy and those things that happen at school. And so it's better. But then you gotta go into these schools and see what's going on, really. And yeah, and I can tell you a lot about what goes on in these schools. Because I spent some time in these schools. Well, she can also share stories. I'm sure. But there's also, so there's a lot of debate about what system is better, mixed co-educational system, or all girls schools, all boys schools. So how do you say that? Say, I went to an all girls school. Say it.
I went to old girls school.
An all girls school.
An old girls school.
Old, no.
Oh.
All girls school.
Old girls school.
Yes. I went to an all girls school. And what did you do in there? Okay. I don't want to know. So, I'm going to keep it here. I'm going to give you guys a 10-minute break, but exactly a 10-minute break, because I want to, if I can, finish this topic today, so tomorrow we can talk about it. I want to send you home with lots of words and thoughts. Tomorrow we want to talk about this, and I'll let you know what.